पंचण मुक्कारो सव पावपणासणो मंगलानंच सव्वेसी पढमम हवई मंगलम् नमोकार मंत्र है न्यारा किसने लाखों को तारा
नमोकार मंत्र है न्यारा किसने लाखों को तारा
इस महामंत्र का जाप करो भवजल से मिले किनारा नमो अरिहंताणम नमो सिद्धाणम नमो आयर्याणम नमो ओझायाणम नमो लोये सव्वसाहुणम
नमो लोये सव्वसाहुणम्
येसो पंचण मुक्कारो सव पावपणासणो मंगलानंच सव्वेसी पढमम हवई मंगलम्
नमो 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 नमो
नमोकार मंत्र है न्यारा किसने लाखों को तारा
नमोकार मंत्र है न्यारा किसने लाखों को तारा
इस महामंत्र का जाप करो भवजल से मिले किनारा नमो अरिहंताणम नमो सिद्धाणम नमो आयर्याणम नमो ओझायाणम नमो लोये सव्वसाहुणम
नमो लोये सव्वसाहुणम्
येसो पंचण मुक्कारो सव पावपणासणो मंगलानंच सव्वेसी पढमम हवई मंगलम्
Jai Jinendra everyone and Pranam. On behalf of OneJAIN and the JHI, thank you very much for joining us today. By 2025, it is estimated that over 1 million people in the UK will have a diagnosis of dementia or a neurological disease such as Parkinson's. And apart from those who are afflicted with these conditions, it will take an enormous toll on family members caring for them, husbands, wives, siblings, children. The aim of this webinar is to help this army of carers with practical advice on when to ask for help, where to find support, how to assess care options, and when to start forward planning. And even if we ourselves are not in this position, we all know someone who is a carer. So how can we as a community provide help and support to the carers in our midst? To help us answer all of these questions, we have a fantastic panel with us here today. And they come from a variety of backgrounds with a variety of experiences. And I'd like to now introduce them to you one by one. We have Dr. Khyati Bakai. Khyati is a strategic lead GP partner at Bromley by Bow Health and a GP Connect director. She is also the primary care lead for Tower Hamlets and clinical lead for long-term conditions. Within the Jain community, Khyati is very, very active. And for that, last year, she won the OneJAIN Young Achievers Award for community service. And within the JHI team of 40 healthcare scientists and medical professionals, she is our strategy lead and also member of the JHI steering committee. And Khyati is also a mom of 2 young daughters. Next, we will have Mala Jain. Mala has had a variety of roles in her career. She has been a business analyst for various international companies, a legal cashier for compensation solicitors, and currently she works for the Shaw Trust, which is a charitable organisation in the UK which supports people with complex needs. So it helps people like disabled adults get into work. And at the Shaw Trust, she's an enterprise supervisor. But Mala is also a carer, and that is what she's going to be talking about to you today in her talk. Next, we have Varsha Dodhia. And many of you will know Varsha. She's very active within the Jain community and Gujarati community. Varsha currently works for the Central and Northwest London NHS Trust as a service improvement manager in the area of mental health and the community. She's also a lay partner advisor for the Harrow Council, for Harrow Clinical Care Group, as well as the Northwest London Integrated Care and the wider NHS. Whilst caring for her in-laws, Varsha understood the challenges faced by older people in the UK, and she's actively involved in dementia and elderly care as a champion. Varsha is also a UK qualified teacher, and the welfare of children and young people is very close to her heart. Lastly, we have Vishal Shah. Now, by profession, originally, Vishal is a chartered financial analyst, and he started off his career in corporate finance and investment. But since then, he has gained 15 years of experience working at a senior level in an operational and advisory capacity across health and social care, including with national healthcare providers, Westminster Healthcare and Barchester Healthcare. Currently, Vishal is the founder of Bunyan Home Care Services. He is also a board trustee and treasurer of Care England, which is the leading representative body for independent care services throughout the UK. So in England, rather. Vishal is married with 2 children, and he's a keen explorer of the world, and he's also a charity fundraiser. So as you can see, we have our great panel of speakers. So to kick it off, I would now, I'm going to be handing shortly over to Kathy. But what I would like to say before we move over to the speakers is, while you're listening to their talks, if you have any questions that come to your mind, you can post them in the Zoom chat function if you're watching on Zoom, or if you're watching on Zoom on YouTube, please put your questions in the comment sections. And what we will do is we'll collate all your questions and we'll put them to the panel after their presentations are over. If you would like to ask a question anonymously, you can do that. We will be putting some links up to an anonymous submission form. And the other thing that you can do when we do the Q&A is, if you would like to ask your question in person, come on camera. We will ask you to do that, and Kathy Ben will give you instructions during the Q&A how you can do that. So you can actually come on the camera and ask your questions to the panel. My name is Rajvi Punatha. I'm also a member of the JHI team. I'm the delivery lead for these webinars, and I'm really, really proud of all the work that we are doing in JHI. So if you want to watch this webinar or share it with anyone after we have finished speaking today, or look at any of the other webinars we've done, please go to the OneJAIN YouTube channel, which is at onejainuk.org. So with that, now I'd like to hand over to Kathy Bakai, who will kick us off with an introduction to our topic today. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Rajubin. Badare Jajanendra. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much to everyone joining us for our talk tonight. When we started our webinars with the Jain Health Initiative, we set out with the aim of making our community the healthiest it could be by giving you the knowledge to look after your own well-being, by bringing you the information about how to stay healthy, how to recognize problems early.
I'm not sure if everybody can hear.
And how to get help.
No, we can't hear.
Within our systems.
Okay, sorry, Kathy Ben, if you can just make your sound a bit louder, maybe bring the mic closer to you. Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Brilliant, thank you. So today's talk is vital for our community because, as Rajubin said, many of us look after our loved ones who have long-term conditions. Not only will we be talking about the patients today, but also think about the well-being of those that look after the patients, the carers. We will hear from the carers today with their honest experience and learning. We will talk in more detail about two specific conditions, as Rajvibin mentioned, Parkinson's and dementia. But if you're watching and thinking that that isn't relevant for you, pay closer attention, because a lot of what we will talk about today applies to any patient with a long-term condition and any person that cares for them. If you are a patient with a long-term condition listening to us today, we invite you to share your thoughts, feelings, and views during the Q&A session also. If you're watching from outside England, or you have relatives abroad who are in this situation, do remember that although some of the services and resources will be different, many countries will have something similar available. So let's start with Parkinson's. Parkinson's disease is a condition of the brain that most commonly is diagnosed by a tremor. It starts often in one side of the body in the hand. Often this can be mild at first, but it can get more obvious with time. It can then progress to cause stiffness or rigidity in the body and slowing down of movement and speech. Because of this problem, patients with Parkinson's may have changes in their posture and walking, talking, and even facial expressions. It can affect other parts of the body, causing problems like constipation, problems with swallowing, and it can be associated with memory problems. Parkinson's impacts affected people in different ways, and we need to remember that each of these symptoms can worsen, and we must plan ahead for these situations. This condition affects 1 in 100 people in our community over the age of 55, but as we will hear, rarely it can be seen in younger patients also. We know that Parkinson's is caused when brain cells and nerves are affected in a particular part of the brain, but we don't actually know what triggers this. There is no specific test or brain scan that can diagnose Parkinson's, and there are other conditions that can mimic some of the same symptoms. So when we suspect this diagnosis, GPs like me will want to do some tests and refer you to a specialist that can check for other causes before we make the diagnosis. So this can take some time. Currently, there is no cure for Parkinson's. However, there are treatments that help slow down the progression and help combat some of the symptoms. At first, you may not need any medicine if the symptoms are mild, but treatments can include medicines such as levodopa, and for severe symptoms, surgery such as deep brain stimulation may be an option. For all different stages of this condition, physiotherapist, occupational therapist, and speech therapist may be useful. When we talk about prognosis, we mean things like life expectancy or how this condition will progress. Well, the prognosis for Parkinson's varies a lot from person to person. For some, it may be mild for up to 20 years after diagnosis, and for others, they may be severely affected within 10 years. But the condition is progressive and it does worsen with time. So we must plan ahead to make some adjustments that will help maintain a good quality of life as long as possible, despite all of this. The most common and important practicalities to think ahead for are things like bathing, dressing, toileting, feeding, and mobility. And in addition, support for the carers, the people who will be helping. On that note, I would like to invite Malabin to tell us her journey as a carer, and I'd like to thank her in advance for sharing her personal journey so that others can benefit and learn from these experiences. Thank you, Malabin. I'm just going to stop sharing slides and pass it over to you.
Okay. Can you see me? First of all, thank you, Kathy Ben. Would you be able to show the picture that the photograph I gave initially? Okay. First of all, I'd like to say Jai Jinendra to everyone. And I would like to introduce two very special people in my life. There's my mum on the left in the red sari, and that is Ranjan Ben Barak. And my sasu, but who also treated me like a mum, is Pushpa Ben Kalreya Jain. Pushpa Ben Kalreya Jain, she set up the Jain Association over 40 years ago. And hence, I wanted to put this photo here so that to give you a bit of history. And I'd just like to say, Jai Jinendra to everyone today, and I'd like to give you my story. Yeah. Okay. So basically, I got married in 1998 to somebody who I met, and his name is Ajay Jain. My mum and dad were very happy that he was a vegetarian Jain, because that's what they really wanted for me. Ajay is a lawyer. Can you hear me? As long as you can. Ajay is a lawyer, and we had 5 years of marriage before Parkinson's hit our lives. So Ajay was 39 when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. We'd gone to the GP, who actually recommended that we go and see the consultant. So when we went to see the consultant, we were both sitting in front of the consultant. He had the notes sent from the GP. And all I can say was the consultant had a tear in his eye, because he was looking at both of us and he realized what the journey was ahead of us. However, we just heard the word Parkinson's and didn't really have a clue at all. So my first practical tip to you is, if you're given a diagnosis, ask questions about what it means. And one thing that I'd say right from the beginning is everyone is an individual. So your Parkinson's diagnosis is going to be different from anyone else. It's just like the way that we are all unique. So by looking at somebody else, please don't sort of say, oh, I'm going to be like that in 10 years. Nobody knows. Nobody knows how the medications are going to affect you, what you're going to feel like, how you're going to feel, because everybody's bodies are different. So my first advice to you is treat yourself as an individual, but try and take information, the positive things, or the information that you get, try and assess it properly so that you make good judgment calls for your own journey and for your own well-being. Right. That was my first thing. So the first few years were quite. Can you hear me still? Yeah. Okay.
So, sorry, Malaben, can I ask everyone else who is on to please mute, apart from Malaben, please mute your mics. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Just let me know if I need to go any faster or slower. I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay. Right. So the first kind of tips I can say to you, and the first people who helped me was like when we went to the consultant, there was a Parkinson's nurse. And the fact that there was a Parkinson's nurse with the consultant, it meant a lot. And one thing I know is that not all areas will have Parkinson's nurses. So what I suggest is you try and find somewhere where there is a nurse, because it's almost like they're hand-holding you. The consultant is looking at the medications that they need to give the patient, but the Parkinson's nurse is trying to help you through the journey in all the other ways. So looking at it from a more holistic point of view. Moving forward, Ajay's condition got, slowly worse. The medications that he had to take would sometimes make him really, really sleepy. So there were times when he would sleep about, say, 12 to 14 hours in the day, and I didn't know what was going on. So sometimes the medications can have an effect that you don't know what's going on in your life. All I can say is, keep a diary, keep keep a diary of how things are going, so that when you see your consultant the next time round, they get a clear view of what is actually going on. And the other thing that you'll also note is like what the patient actually remembers and what the carer remembers can be quite different. You know, they may think certain things are happening to them, and what you see, what you observe may be different too. So it's important to have both perspectives for the consultant to give you the right view on what should happen with the medications. Moving on to a slightly different area, there is a lot of help out there, and bear in mind that we were in the situation about 15 to 18 years ago. The amount of help that is out there has changed, you know, considerably. So the first thing I'd say to you is there's a lot of forms to fill in, and with that form filling, I would actually suggest get an expert to help you fill in these forms. So there's examples like, you know, there could be get a blue badge, for instance, if they assess that, you know, you can't get to the bus stops, or you've got problems with your walking or your gait. The gait is the way you walk. So what I'm trying to say is, like, any help that you need, don't try and do it yourself. I think both myself and Ajay, we spent years trying to fill in these forms, and it took its toll because it takes you a long time to fill in a 30-page form. You know, bear in mind if you were okay and you were trying to do it, but this is somebody with Parkinson's and the carer who's already tired trying to fill in these forms just to get some extra help. So I hope I've made that clear. You know, try and get as much help as you can early on. The next group that I'd like to highlight is Harrow carers. So whilst this journey was going on, we were both working. Ajay is a lawyer, and I was trying to help him run the law firm. So, you know, we had a busy business to run. With this, we needed to, you know, make sure that we were trying to look after our health at the same time. As this went along, it was unfortunate that I ended up getting some kind of like anxiety issues going on, and it could have been because of the stress levels that I had to go through. Yeah, okay. And what I'd like to say is, make sure you use all the local groups that can help and support you. And one area that really helped me was Harrow Carers. So I'm talking about the specific one that helped me, but I'm sure that there are different carers groups in, you know, whichever area you're living in. And if there aren't, then I suggest that, you know, if you have time on your hands, try and set one up, because it's something that is definitely needed to support the people within your communities. Yeah. The type of things that Harrow Carers did was they would give us sessions like on positive psychology, so to give you ideas on how to help your own health, look after your well-being, mindfulness, areas about like going into nature, going for walks, anything that you enjoyed doing, because as a carer, it's very easy to decide that you're going to be the carer and that your life is like, you know, has to come second. Whereas the thing is, in reality, your life has to come first in order to look after the patient. Yeah. Another tip that I'd like to give is something that we did fairly early on. A couple of times we tried to go on flights, and our initial experience of flying out was so difficult, because if you think about the things that you have to do, you have to pack, you have to get yourself ready, you have to get all your flight information ready, your money, your passports, your visas, and put that together with trying to look after somebody else with Parkinson's who can't have control over their body in terms of timings. So what I'd suggest with any form of travel, get assistance. So with the flights, there's assisted travel. And by that, it means that, you know, from the airport, you can almost get help door to door. So from the time that you actually leave, you know, from the time that you actually get to the airport, to the time that you actually leave your destination at airport, you've got somebody looking after you all the way through. And you know, I'd suggest to anyone with this, it's a godsend, and you'll realize how compassionate people can be when they see that this is what you need. So, you know, one thing I'd say is people's compassion comes out when you're in this situation. So with our story, you know, I'll carry on. So Parkinson's is a degenerative condition. So as we went along with time, Ajay's medications were increasing, you know, increasing probably every 2 years. And it came to a stage where, you know, it felt like you had a shopping bag of medicines. Now, I know that it's not a nice thing to say, but it's difficult to manage. You know, so there was times when I was counting his medicines, deciding what to give him. And again, as a carer, I think one service which is very useful is that you can ask your GP to prepare a dossier box where the chemist can sort out your medications, make sure that you've got the right ones, and prepare it for you. So again, I would say, rather than, you know, if you've got a lot of medicines to deal with, if you can do it by yourself, then fine, you know, do it, because it gives you that level of independence. But if you're struggling and you can't do it, then I suggest it's worthwhile getting the dossier box organized for you, so that the medications are dealt with, and that you don't have to worry whether you're taking the right ones at the right times. And more recently, I've made sure that my husband, he takes his own medicine. So before I was doing it all for him, and now I'm not doing it for him. And I think the turning point for us was we got to a situation where the health became so difficult that, you know, eventually Ajay was in a wheelchair and he needed carers. So the Parkinson's had got quite difficult, you know, in terms of basic care about going to the bathroom, about dressing. And I think I made a judgment call at that point that this is the amount that I can do, and I can't do anymore. So, you know, usually as a carer, you might beat yourself up and say, you know, I can't do this anymore, or I should have done better. But there comes a time when you have to draw the line. So when we got the carers in, what I'd say to you is, I wish I'd got them in earlier. I wish I had, and then maybe my health would have been a bit better. Yeah. Once the carers come in, you get used to it. You get used to them helping you out. And it makes a huge difference, because not only does the patient get their own independence, but you as the carer, you get your life back as well. So, you know, that's what I'd like to say. Don't think that having carers is a big deal. If you've got them, if you can organise them, you know, it's the best thing ever. And that's one thing that I'd like our community to try and strive for, helping people get carers in place, because that's a really hard thing to do. Right, I'm just going to try and finish off, because I don't know how much time I've taken. A couple of things that they've said which is good for Parkinson's. One is playing table tennis. So anything with hand-eye coordination, any kind of sport. If you can catch a ball, go and do it. If you can play, you know, cricket, hockey, anything that you can do, any sport, it's always going to be good for the brain, because it's connecting the nerve cells from any part of your body back to the brain. But obviously, make sure you're safe enough to do it. So you don't actually want any health and safety issues. Another thing that they said was quite good was also these gaming things that you get. Like, I think previously they had games which you could play, like the Wii, and you could play golf, you could play cricket. So all those ones are considered to be helpful towards Parkinson's, because again, you're doing the actions and it's connecting to the brain. So it's helping the brain connect and, you know, get better, so to speak. The final point I'd like to make is World Parkinson's Day is on April the 11th, 2022. What I'd like to do is raise the awareness of Parkinson's and the carers, and I'd be really grateful if everybody could join in on that. Again, it's on April the 11th, 2022, and the aim is to shine a blue light for Parkinson's Day. If you need any help from myself in terms of Sure Trust, what I do, please, we'll talk about that in the chat later, okay? I've covered most of the points. I think the final thing that I wanted to say on a good note is that Ajay had, very luckily, he had DBS treatment, which is deep brain stimulation, which is surgery where you've got a pacemaker connected to the brain. And for him, he had many tests to go and, to check whether he was a suitable candidate. And one of the things that they said was he's got a young brain. The fact that he kept on working meant that he, kept his brain young, and they thought that this treatment would help. And following that treatment, he's been able to play golf, he's been able to drive the car again, and is able to make a cup of tea again, even though he tells me that my tea is better than his. Thank you very much. Jai Jinendra to all of you. All I can say is use your time wisely and enjoy your life. Thank you very much. If you can pass it on to Ajay's photo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Malabin. This is Ajay Bhai's photo, a huge tribute to him and a big tribute to Malabin as well, who's actually the reason why we have set up this webinar today. As a community organisation, we're really interested in community members coming to us and asking us or suggesting to us what they would like to talk about. And Malabin was really proactive and really passionate about sharing her learning. And I can see from the chat as well, so many people have found it helpful. And hopefully there's so many practical tips there, so many things that people can relate to. So thank you both to Malabin and to Ajay Bhai, who's here in the photo as well. I can see also in the chat some really helpful comments from people like Mayur Bhai and Veena Bin, the kind of places that you can go to ask for help, which includes things like social prescribers. So the input from the community in the chat is really, really helpful. So please do keep it coming. I'd like to move us on to the next bit of our talk today, which is going to be about dementia. So dementia is actually an umbrella term that we use for a range of conditions that affect the brain and can progress from mild symptoms to quite severe symptoms, similar to Parkinson's. There are actually over 200 different types of dementia, but the commonest ones that are diagnosed are Alzheimer's disease and something called vascular dementia. Now, it's important to note that it's normal for your memory to be affected by things like stress, tiredness, certain illnesses, and even medicine. However, over the age of 65 particularly, forgetfulness that impacts your daily life is something that could be a symptom of dementia. It's important to remember that dementia is not actually a natural part of aging. You don't just become forgetful with age. And that dementia is not just about memory loss either. It can also affect the way you think, the way you speak, the way you feel, and the way you behave. Dementia symptoms can include problems with memory loss, but also thinking speed and mental sharpness, difficulty with language, such as using words incorrectly or having difficulty finding the right words to express something, mood problems, which can include low mood or anger or inappropriate laughing even, and difficulty with judgment, such as judging safety in certain situations. These symptoms can lead to difficulties doing day-to-day activities, and so people with dementia can lose interest in their usual activities and find social activities quite difficult. If someone has some of these symptoms of dementia, please visit your GP as soon as possible. Like Parkinson's, there are some other conditions that can mimic these symptoms, and other treatable conditions have similar symptoms, which we will check for. We will take the person's medical history and family history and ask questions about concentration, short-term memory, mood, behavior, and other changes. We may then refer to a specialist clinic, like a memory clinic in hospital, for further assessment. Similar to Parkinson's, there is actually no cure for certain types of dementia like Alzheimer's disease, but medication is available to help slow down the progression. And other treatments may be available depending on the type of dementia that you are diagnosed with. As dementia affects a person's mental abilities, they may find planning and organizing difficult. Maintaining their independence may also become a problem. A person with dementia will usually need help from friends or relatives, including help when making decisions. The symptoms of dementia usually become worse over time. In the late stages of dementia, people will not be able to take care of themselves and may lose their ability to communicate effectively. So it is vital that we plan ahead to support the patient and also the carer. For the carers, there is a carers assessment available via the local authority. We would ask that members of the community listening who may have know people who are looking after those with dementia to offer help wherever they can and allow carers a break from their duties, which can often be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are support networks available for carers as well to talk to others in similar situations, and we will hear about a range of other conditions available as well. It is so important to plan ahead and speak to the people affected by it to understand what their wishes are. Sometimes these conversations can be really difficult, but when situations get worse, these can be so helpful in knowing the wishes of the people who are affected. With that, I'd like to pass on to Vishal Pai, who's going to speak to us, to pass you on to Varshabin, who's going to speak to us about her experience of caring with someone with dementia.
Jai Jinendra, everyone, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about dementia today. I'll just share my slides. Right. So today I'm going to talk to you about what it is like as a carer for somebody who has dementia. And I'll also bring some of my experience of supporting other carers today. As Kathy Ben has just said, dementia is a progressive condition. So sometimes when people say it's a patient, I think about that we need to think about people who live with this condition. So how can we make the life of somebody who has this condition better? And as we said, that they would lose their independence. So one thing with dementia is that if you can't remember things, it is really, really difficult to carry on like you were before. So you're not the same person as you were before. This is mainly affecting people who are older, although it can affect people who are younger as well. So if you're under 65, the condition is called young onset dementia, because in this country, in the UK, the retirement age used to be 65. So that's why they've said anybody who's kind of working age, you are young onset dementia. And if you are older than that, then you fall into the older group. So imagine that if you lose kind of the way you are thinking, if you cannot keep, track of time, it of course kind of creates a fear within the person. And somehow, initially the reaction is kind of a little bit of anger that why can't I do certain things? So the behavior of the person who gets dementia changes. The other thing is the taste buds or their food preferences would change. And sometimes as it progresses, people find it difficult to swallow food. So you would find that they have kind of choking or, what kind of food that they can eat. One of the really, really difficult things about dementia is, kind of feeling that you need to go to the toilet, but by the time you get there, it's a bit too late. So you have an accident. And in terms of a person, they feel their dignity is kind of really affected. So this is one of the most difficult areas when you're looking after somebody who's older or somebody who's got dementia. And the other condition that happens is a person with dementia loses track of time. So sometimes it's like they would sleep during the daytime and stay awake at night, and that poses its own challenges. So just kind of, if you think about it, that it's going to get progressively worse. Initially, when somebody may have this condition, they will try to kind of hide it. It's natural, we find it very difficult to talk about this. So, they would kind of change a little bit how they work. They'll ask for help. Sometimes if they want to travel somewhere, they'll say, I don't feel like going on my own. Would you just come with me? So this is the initial part of dementia. This is the time when even family members wouldn't really realize that, something has changed for them. As we get a little bit further down, this is when they start, having what they call cognitive difficulties. So it's like, managing their bank account, or, if they have to go to, let's say, somewhere, changing the tube or the buses, they would find it difficult. And this is when, you start seeing the psychological problems, feeling of anger, feeling of frustration, just they feel they kind of locked into a particular place. This is when we start really worrying about the agitation that the person feels as the condition has progressed, and the altered sleep patterns. This is the time when you start thinking, okay, I think looking after my loved one at this stage is really difficult. So in my case, one of my in-laws had dementia, and when they started feeling really distressed, kind of, especially when they lost their independence, that they could travel on the bus on their own, they felt kind of, we were within four walls. At that time, we were living abroad. So, but this is the time when it became really, really difficult. And then when we go towards the end, this is the severe part of dementia. This is when they come towards the end of life. And this is when we think about people with very severe dementia who become bedbound or have very little mobility. They even cannot recognize their family members. And the biggest part is, when they really become doubly incontinent. So this is the most difficult stage around caring for somebody with dementia. So what can we do? If we know somebody in our family is passing through this, as we've been saying, that just seek out help early. And some of the material that's available online from Alzheimer's Society or Dementia UK will actually give you places you could go to. Kathy Ben has told us, how the diagnosis happens. So once you've been to the memory clinic, they would give you a diagnosis. But between the memory clinic and then things progressive, there is a kind of the difficult area that you will have to navigate. So this is a time when you seek out all the information that you need. One thing we must always do for people who have dementia or even any other long-term condition is keep a healthy body, because by being active, by working, even doing gentle exercises, being outside, being social, it actually keeps them in a good place longer. So even though you may have a condition, we should really try to encourage as much activity as possible. And one thing about dementia is anything that's good for your heart is also good for your brain. So, even if they can't do just armchair yoga or armchair exercises, going for walks, going out in nature with them, it really, really helps. And the idea is to keep them in a good place as long as possible, because the difficult stage will come later. One thing we really need to do around dementia is really get some of the legal and financial and healthcare decisions a bit thought through. And this is where we would need a little bit of advanced care planning or in some cases also get some legal papers together. So the conversations around advanced care planning are really important. And I think whoever's in this situation, we need to make a family decision, because I think caring for somebody with dementia is actually more than one person. One person cannot do it all on their own, because each person is individual and what their wishes are would be individual. So if I can say, in my father-in-law's case, he was very much a social person. He liked playing cards. Whatever he wanted to do was quite different. In my mother-in-law's case, she was really religious. So for her, she could pass the time. Good thing for her was that she was able to read. She didn't have dementia, but she had a long-term condition in terms of arthritis, and she was really, really frail. So in both their cases, the kind of activities they did were very different, and they had real personal choices around it. The second item is we will need help of lots of people. And I think, when you have a long-term condition, I would just tell everyone, make your GP your best friend, because a lot of things can be accessed through your GP surgery, and then they would signpost you to certain places also, or referrals they need to make. And the other part is, if you do need a social care, just approach your local council early on, and there are places where they would direct you for information. So in some way, if we can keep the care that they need, which is coordinated, because with dementia, you can imagine the person, if you have to lift them up, just in case if they need to get to the toilet, they can't do on their own, or even if they are in bed, it's very difficult for a single person to do it. You might need help of another person. And this is a time when, you may have domiciliary carers coming in, or you get support from other members in the family. And especially if the person becomes incontinent, then there are specialist nurses who would be able to direct to you where to get support. We must always, always think about this person at the center of the things that they need. What do they like? So, days when they're kind of feeling really agitated. I still remember for my father-in-law that when he was feeling agitated or whatever, what I would do? I'd make lapsing, because the smell of the cooking, he really loved his sweet things. So, it actually helped him kind of really feel in a good place. There are times, you can give just a little bit of a head massage, some nice lavender oil, and the smell. So use the other senses that, really help. The other thing is, like my younger son, so for granddad, the highlight of his day would be just taking little Mihir to the laundress next door, buying him a Kit Kat and coming home. Those little pleasures that they have are really important, which makes their life really meaningful. So when you have an extended family, every person can play a part. It's not just a single person who's doing the caring, because the physical care can be quite difficult, but let's enlist everybody and let everybody know, what they can do, because that becomes really, really enabling. Why is this really important? Can you imagine, when you get diagnosed with dementia till the end, it can be a number of years, and it can really lead to stress. So if you want really good outcomes for both somebody who's caring and somebody who has the condition, it's really, really important that both of them are well. I've seen a family, it was like Dada and Dadi used to live together, and Dadi needed a knee replacement. So at that time, she would be in hospital, and then she would need reablement. So all the grandchildren decided, okay, we're going to take turns to look after Dada. And some of the most interesting questions were coming from the grandchildren, because they were so insightful. So it's not just something that the elderly people in the family do, even get the younger people, sometimes just playing cards, or doing ramat kamat and having laughter in the family. That's really helpful. Talking about your GP, a lot of people who may have dementia may have another condition as well. So imagine if you have diabetes and then you get dementia, you still need to manage your diabetes. You need to make sure, if you're taking insulin or if you're taking medication. So all this needs to be managed together with the condition of dementia. And sometimes, other conditions can play, because if you are not taking your medication on time, or things are not happening for you, that can have detrimental effect on both. And especially when you really need to go into hospital, this is one of the most difficult times for a person who has dementia, because a ward looks very different from what they're used to at home. So it's really, really important that whoever's caring for a person with dementia, the wider family is involved. And one thing I would really recommend is that we develop a dementia-friendly community. Because I know that, if I have a loved one who has got dementia, sometimes taking them to our community functions becomes quite difficult, because imagine 3 or 4 people talking to them and they get confused. So, sometimes you feel, is it really worthwhile taking them? What I would recommend is, yes, do take them, but also just look after them when they are there, so that if one person talks at a time, they are better able to follow the conversation. And if they don't want to talk in that kind of setting, just let them enjoy the atmosphere. It's not necessary that they have to participate in all the different social that happens. So just looking at other professionals who can help. For dementia, there are admiral nurses. So like Malabin said, that there are Parkinson's nurses. These admiral nurses are real specialists in dementia, but they're not in each and every area. So if you're lucky, you would have an admiral nurse in your area. Otherwise, you can go and talk to Dementia UK, which is also, and they would signpost you where you could get. We've talked, Malabin's talked about like hero carers, but there are carers center in each of the boroughs, and under the Care Act, you are entitled to do that. Dementia UK and Alzheimer's Society have local groups, and there are lots of things that are happening. So please search out if there is a local group, because some of the things that every one of you are going through, you'll be able to share. And sometimes a problem shared is a problem halved. Culturally appropriate service. Now, this is really important. So for both my mother-in-law and father-in-law, if I had taken them to a normal dementia center, they would not be able to participate, because everything is happening in English and they cannot access that. And with dementia as well, even if they could speak English, their language starts regressing. So they will revert back to Gujarati. So in Harrow, we found that one of the care homes actually had a day center, Maya at Suncroft. So yes, and that was where, some of the Gujarati groups met. So it was really helpful. And for a little while, we had a little dementia cafe in our house. Other people used to come. So seek out if there is something that is done in the language that is appropriate for us. Sometimes it's just playing Bollywood songs, and it was called Chai and Chat, and just having a little bit of fun really makes it meaningful for them. Caring is not about martyrdom. Really, we should seek out, because every one of us need a break, and sometimes it's offered by statutory services, but more and more there aren't enough resources. So we are left to rely on the resources amongst our close friends and family. So do please take care of yourself. And then within the GP practice, sometimes, if you need a medication review or other teams, there are now pharmacists within the GP practice. There are social prescribers, as Kathy Bennett said. So there are other professionals in your GP practice who may be able to help you. And with the social services, like the Blue Badge, there might be a taxi card for some, because, when you're getting elderly, so if you're an elder person, you cannot drive around, and there are some taxi cards and taxi journeys available, especially in London, because, the distances can be quite long, or sometimes they would be useful for your hospital appointments as well. So please do check out those two things, a Blue Badge and a taxi card. something about, we've talked about looking after yourself. The caring journey can be very, very long. So what I would recommend is, if you get a carer's assessment, and if you're looking after somebody for more than 35 hours a week, do get a carer's allowance, especially if you're working age, because what it does is that it gives you the national insurance contribution, which is paid on your behalf, because we are all living longer and a lot of the pension rules are also changing. So one thing, please look after yourself and your future as well, because if you get the carer's allowance, then that would help. Care cost for a person who has dementia can be really significant. And, especially if it is a time comes when they might need a care home, or you might need a lot more care. In this country, it can be quite expensive. So the rules for care costs are quite draconian in some ways, because you only get help if you don't have any savings. And a lot of our community members really feel that, we get very little support from our local authority. And I think Vishalbhai is going to talk a little bit more about that. And finally, I would really recommend that take some respite care. If you're caring full time, each of us need to recharge our batteries. If you're caring full time, you can't care on an empty. So, even if it means if you get 2 weeks a year or whatever, do take that time. Even if you can take a few hours, go and see a film, go and talk to a friend, go and see somebody for coffee, because these little things are really, really important. And also, if you are caring full time and you are working age, I would really ask you, think about when your caring journey comes to an end. So I would tell about myself, because I was doing a lot of voluntary work with the NHS. So when my mother-in-law passed away, I was really fortunate that because of my voluntary work, I was able to get a job after that, because it was a long time before I could retire. So just think about, and it's like you only get 6 weeks and then you've got to go and find a job. So this is, it feels really cruel, because you're still grieving, you're still getting your other things in order. But think about, when your caring journey will come to an end. So we've talked about walks, healthy eating, maintaining friendships, sleep. Everybody really needs their good sleep. And one thing about dementia is, if the person wakes up a number of times at night, that can be quite draining. So do really, really try to really catch up on your sleep. And the other thing is, keep your brain stimulated, doing puzzles, even like Sudoku or memory games, Waddle's been a good one at the moment. So, just take part. Within our culture, if you can do yoga and some of those breathing pranayams, that would help with your anxiety. If you're feeling anxious or if you're feeling really drained out, it will help you energize. So do seek out those. So today I'd like to say 3 takeaways if you're caring for somebody with dementia or you're really a carer. Make sure that at your GP practice, you are registered as a carer. Because sometimes, they would make special that you can get a double appointment for your loved one and yourself. Or you can sometimes say, look, because of my caring responsibilities, I need for myself a special appointment. They may make an allowance. Second one is a carer's assessment. As I said, you can't care on an empty. Please, the carer's assessment is mandatory in a way, but a lot of us, we don't ask for it. And some of the questions they ask makes you think, am I doing this right? Or is there something else I need? So this carer's assessment is for you as a carer. And the third thing is, if there are any training courses, seek them out, especially things around like lifting and handling. We all do it without training, lifting an older person, and sometimes we injure our back. Sometimes we don't know how to do it properly. So there are lots of training courses available, depending on what your circumstances are. But do get some professional training, because that really helps. sometimes, we just take on a caring role and we don't think about ourselves. So this is really, really essential. And one thing I would say is within our Jain community, if there are people who are trained, do offer to do this for others. So lastly, lots of places where you can get information. So this is where I will stop my talk, and I will stop sharing my slides, and then I will now hand over to Vishalbhai Shah to carry on with his talk on social care. Thank you very much.
Namaste and Jai Jitendra. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak at my screen. Today, I speak to you not only to represent the professional care sector, but also as a grandson who saw his grandmother live with Alzheimer's disease until she sadly passed. Some statistics, just to bring context. There are now some 54 million people around the world that live with dementia, with over 9 million diagnosed each year. By 2050, it is expected that this will increase to 130 million. In the UK, as you said earlier, it's expected that about a million people will be living with dementia by 2025, and around 145,000 people living with Parkinson's disease right now, but likely to be many more that have remained undiagnosed. While it is commonly thought that such long-term conditions are only related to aging, there are some 42,000 younger people living with dementia in the UK, with as many as young as 30 years in age, and around 2,000 under the age of 50 living with Parkinson's. I'm not sure, there's some things going on the slides, but hopefully you can still see through the slides. I'm not sure where that drawing's coming from. We as a community are not immune to these long-term conditions, but it has often remained a topic that is not discussed enough and something we must change. As we have heard from Malaben's and Rashaben's personal stories, caring for a loved one with a long-term condition can be a journey of many emotions. Each day may present a new scenario, one that creates a lot of happy memories to share, to more challenging days when a range of emotions may take its toll. To an outside observer, long-term conditions such as dementia can be incredibly difficult to fathom, as you see the person in front of you slowly change in behavior, in personality, in the way they communicate, and effectively the person that you knew them to be. As you see yourself losing your loved one to the condition such as dementia. While we always want to be there for our loved one in the same way that they have been there to develop, nurture, and support us, there may come a time when some help and support would make a tremendous impact to you and your loved one. However, the greatest emotional hurdle that one must cross when reaching out for support, almost that elephant in the room, is the feeling of sometimes of guilt. This feeling of guilt is not unnatural and particularly common when we place an expectation that it is our sole responsibility to look after our own family. However, this feeling of guilt is not one that we should be afraid of or ashamed of, but naturally stems from an underlying desire to provide the utmost care at all times. And as such, we should embrace this feeling to help make positive choices to support our loved one. As I've seen in my professional work, you can live a fulfilled life with conditions such as dementia with the right support. And I've seen many live well for decades after being diagnosed. There are many amazing professional carers and residential homes that provide great support and an environment for those living with a long-term condition such as dementia. And we must embrace this support more, not only to help our loved one live well, but to ensure that we also look after ourselves and enjoy the time that we have with our loved one. Reflecting on my daddy's journey, who was more affectionately known as Kaki, and shown in the photo actually on the screen with her life partner. As her dementia progressed, there was a noticeable change in her communication. Her personality and mood would change frequently, and greater assistance was needed with her personal care. Her social interaction needs changed, and she often did not recognize the person showing her care and affection, as it didn't fit in the version of reality that she now perceived, spurring confusion and apprehension. Greater supervision to reduce risk of falls was required, as well as greater care in moving and handling, as explained by Roshaben too. The immediate family cobbled together their various skills and time based on work and wider commitments in hopes she could be provided with the love and care she deserved. But with an eventual realization that without additional support, it would be neither be helping her or helping the family. By engaging with professional carers who were skilled to support her, not only did we see the more regular joy on her face, but also an incredible sense of support to the whole family too. I share this story as we often feel we can fulfill all the requirements currently displayed on the slide as the main carer or as a family. However, the reasons to seek care support become more compelling when you see the benefits of additional support and a more engaging environment. Having the appropriate knowledge of the long-term condition, moving and handling training, experience of how to interact, whilst also providing personal care, professional carers can provide hugely reassuring support and specialist skills that we would not have. Professional care can also provide the necessary respite you need as a carer. It is important to ensure that we look after ourselves, as we shared across this evening, so that we can also look after our loved ones too. Often we may feel that by helping our loved one to remain at home, physically appropriate, and when we are unable to be at home with them all the time, and many hours may pass when our loved ones haven't had the opportunity to interact with anyone, and often with a dependency on our transport to have to travel anywhere to meet others. This is where professional care and communities can help our loved ones to continue to live a fulfilled life and reduce isolation. There's a few summaries on this slide, which I know has been shared earlier as well by others, but often we only consider one route to care, which is that of a care home. However, there are many other touch points where support can be given. For example, informal care and support can be given by reaching out to family and friends, as well as our Samaj community as a starting point. There are also volunteer groups that can help. The Dementia Friends initiative run by Alzheimer's Society has helped train volunteers and the community, whilst also providing befriending services and companionship, either in person or through telephone calls. Group activities are also a great way to keep your loved one engaged and can often provide the respite you also need as a carer. Organizations such as Creative Minds, Arts for Dementia, and technology platforms such as Murthy, to name a few, provide a range of guided and supervised activities that can be enjoyed both from home or in group settings. There are many charities and skilled resources that can also help you as a carer. One was mentioned earlier, the Advil Nurse Service, run through Dementia UK, is a resource where skilled nurses can provide hands-on support and guidance in your own home, as well as strategies to help navigate more demanding situations and the requirement for clinical intervention. When considering more formal care services, community-based services can help support your loved one at home. Domiciliary care, or otherwise known as home care, are regulated services that can provide professional skilled carers to support your loved one with personal care and social needs at home, either on an hourly live-out basis, or should it be appropriate, on a live-in basis. The latter could provide up to 24-hour care on a daily basis, with the comfort of knowing someone is at home with the necessary skills to help both during the day and at night. In addition, it was mentioned daycare centers provide a great hybrid of community interaction and activities, with some providing more culturally specific activities along with language-based care, as we mentioned. Should a more safe and appropriate environment along with 24-hour care and supervision be required, in addition to care homes, there are other options also available, including short-term residential stay centers, sheltered housing schemes with warden services, retirement communities with home care services attached, and hospices for appropriate palliative care. Each environment providing a supportive community and specialist services. Digital innovation in all aspects of our life have also become incredibly helpful when caring for a loved one. Technologies such as Skype, Facebook Portal, FaceTime, and Zoom, to name a few, have reduced the barriers of communication and isolation significantly, with easier access to connecting with family and friends from around the world. Voice-activated artificial intelligence devices can also help with providing games to keep the mind active, reminders to take medication, and music selections to help uplift, reminisce, or perhaps relax when feeling anxious. Software such as Jointly, Mayo, and Life 360 can provide tools to help better coordinate and manage appointments and carers, which along with medication reminder apps can provide easier ways to ensure timeliness of care and support. Through improved motion sensor technology, along with intuitive software, telecare systems can provide 24/7 well-being monitoring, and devices such as the Pebble personal alarm pendant can provide a quick, easy emergency call button should your loved one need assistance at any time. Finally, smart lighting, heating, and even automated grocery shopping has allowed us to schedule daily tasks and requirements to help maintain independence at home. As further investment in technology increases, we're likely to see greater innovation to help maintain independence and safety, even the potential of care assistant robots. Now, choices around care are often made by the perceptions we have. There's often a feeling that care homes are considered as a place of last resort rather than a positive choice. A lot of this has been fueled by many myths that circulate around about care homes, some of which are displayed on the screen. Having been involved in the development and operation of hundreds of care homes across my professional career, there is certainly an opportunity to dispel many of these myths by simply visiting care homes rather than assessing them from a distance. Care homes are vibrant community hubs with excellent facilities, supported by talented and skilled people that work within them. Not only do care homes provide a homely environment that residents make their own, but a social hub to continue and develop hobbies and interests, both old and new. Care homes provide 24-hour care and supervision by trained staff, along with a suite of additional activity, therapy, and hospitality services. Care homes are regulated by the Care Quality Commission and therefore regularly inspected, providing reassurance on the quality of standards and care provided. The COVID pandemic was a challenging time for many, but especially for care homes that have had to adapt and manage infection control and improve the safety and well-being. Now dedicated isolation pods, safe of all. Many modern purpose-built facilities also have cafes, bistros, and private dining to entertain and socialize, to libraries, sensory rooms, and even spa facilities to enjoy more relaxed moments. Most care homes provide ensuite facilities, providing utmost privacy and dignity in personal care. In certain towns, and in particular in London, care homes have also been developed with our community in mind, with catering teams to provide meals to our taste, activities to maintain cultural roots, and some with beautiful mandirs to maintain spiritual connection. However, more can be done with our community support. Most care homes would be open to visiting anytime. However, an initiative called Care Home Open Week takes place each year. This year between 27th June to 3rd July, which is a fantastic opportunity to everything they offer. While you may not be considering a care home at present, it is helpful to be aware of what is available should Home Open Week or at any other time. Professional care is not a one-way road. At times, you may feel by choosing to engage care support, you're giving your loved one away to someone else. The best support comes when working in partnership with professional care. Whether in a care home or a care at home, professional carers can assist and encourage active participation in your loved one's journey, and in a way that makes each interaction meaningful, purposeful, and enjoyable. Activities such as reminiscence, enjoying special moments and days out, helping dress for special occasions, or enjoying meals together are a few areas where you, who knows your loved one best, can help to work in partnership with professional care. You can choose to be as active as you feel and in a way that supports you as much as your loved one. Now, the topic of funding care can be a webinar by itself. However, I wanted to highlight some key points to note when considering care support. Funding follows the individual requiring care and is assessed on their needs. Local authority funding for personal care is means tested, where individual savings are assessed against the thresholds shown on the screen. If the individual's assets, including the primary residence when considering residential care, but not when assessed for care at home, falls above the upper limit, then no financial help would be provided by the local authority, and therefore costs towards care would have to be self-funded. If they fall below the lower limit, then full assistance for care costs are provided by the local authority. There are other assessments that can be done also, such as assessing continuing healthcare needs, for which cost of care could be provided through NHS funding, irrespective of means-tested assessments. These thresholds, however, have been proposed to change from October 2023 as part of the social care reforms, where in England, a cap of £86,000 on lifetime personal care costs, not accommodation, just care, is proposed to be introduced, along with an increase in the upper threshold limit to £100,000 from the current £23,250, with the lower limit also increasing to £20,000. This slide shows a high-level example of what a cost could be expected for each type of care, though this would be assessed based on individuals' care needs and the choice of environment. Given the cost of care support can fall directly to the individual if they do not fall within the thresholds of mean testing, early planning is highly advised and seeking financial advice to make informed choices. While professional care can provide a significant improvement to quality of life, the costs associated can also be significant, which should be planned for. As a concluding slide, when assessing care options, at times it can feel quite a daunting journey. There are, however, many useful resources that can help support your decision-making and information. The Care Quality Commission regulates the care sector and publishes the results of the inspections for each service. So you can assess the quality of each service. However, this should be considered in addition to a visit and other recommendations. There are websites such as carehome.co.uk and homecare.co.uk, which provide a TripAdvisor style of resource where reviews and information are posted by friends and families of those using the service and provides a valuable reflection. Furthermore, specialist resources are available through the tremendous work being done by charities such as Alzheimer's Society, Alzheimer's Research UK, Dementia UK, Championing Social Care, Age UK, and the Social Care Institute for Excellence, to name a few. And a number of links have already been shared in the chat, but they will be shared after the webinar as well. For those interested to learn more about dementia, there is also the Alzheimer's Show, which is a great 2 days conference or exhibition, which showcases all the tools available to help support, as well as education, those living with dementia. And this year it is on the 25th to 26th of March in 2022 in London. In conclusion, while caring for a loved one brings with it a journey of many emotions, there's always support available with the skills and knowledge to assist. It is sometimes just requires us to put faith in others to help, who are better placed to help as well. Thank you. I would now like to pass it back to Jyoti Ben to take it further forward.
Thank you so much, Vishal Bhai. I think there was an issue with the audio on Vishal Bhai's end, which we were trying to deal with. I hope you've managed to stick with some of the information that was given. As in our webinar so far, there's been so much information shared by Varshabin, Malabin, Vishal Bhai, myself, and in my consultations normally, patients who have had a consultation with a doctor, we know that they often don't remember more than about 20% of what is said. And so in this situation, I imagine there's a lot of information to take in. What we have done is we have put this link of this actual webinar on YouTube as well, for anyone who wants to go back and listen to any of the sections or remind themselves of any pieces of information that we shared with you today. That is an option. We're also happy to be contacted, and there's an opportunity for question and answers in a moment as well. What I'd like to do is thank all the speakers and just ask them to be on standby to answer any questions and answers. I would like to ask members of the community as well, if they'd like to come onto Zoom to ask any questions or make any comments, please do raise your hands. I will instruct you when I will be coming to you, and there'll be someone who will ask you to unmute, turn your cameras on and ask the questions or make comments directly. A particular plea to any patients, anyone with a long-term condition, if you would like to share your views and thoughts and comments on all of this, we would very much like to hear that, because we are doing this for you and we're also doing this for the carers, and making sure that our community has all the information that they need to maintain the best quality of life for as long as possible. So with that, I'd like to move us across to our question and answer session as well. I'm going to start by asking Varshabin, actually. One of the questions that have come to us is, what is a carer's assessment? Is that something you'd be able to answer, and I can fill in some gaps as well?
Hello, thank you very much. So a carer's assessment is seeing you as a person who has a substantial role. So can I just say, imagine a couple. So an 80-year-old Ba is looking after an 85-year-old Bapuji, right? And the Ba is the main carer. Now, for them to be able to lift him is not going to be possible. So as a carer's assessment, some of the things that you need are noted down. And then a care plan can be developed. If you are a younger carer, for example, a carer might be under the age of 25 or even at school, they can get an assessment. So I can talk about Harrow, but in other places it would be similar. Harrow Council is actually responsible for the carers assessment. So in the borough, there are about 25,000 carers, but now they've given it to Harrow carers to do this assessment. And there is a special form. So it's like, what are your circumstances? What do you need? What do you do? How many hours of care are you providing? What are the difficulties you are facing? And then from that, you can develop, what your need is. So I know that there are times people really struggle with care. And with the carer's assessment, it also gives you a signposting. So for example, somebody was asking, where can I get this? So if you didn't know a care home, there where a person who's speaking Gujarati can be placed, then they would have a list of those things. So within the carer's assessment, and it could be done annually because your caring circumstances can change, right? First year, it may not be very difficult. The second year, it could progress, or after 2 years down the line, your difficulties, you yourself could be in a different health situation, right? So I've known of people who needed a knee replacement. So what do you do with your loved one while you're going to be in hospital? So all those things can be put in a carer's assessment for you, and then a care plan can be developed.
That's really comprehensive. Thank you. And as Varshabin said, this is not just specific to Harrow. Anywhere in the country, it's accessed via the local authority. So the council, you can ask for a carer's assessment, and if you need, you can ask for an interpreter who can speak your language to help you with the assessment. There is a form, and then a follow-up is often done by telephone, sometimes a visit as well. And the kind of questions they will ask you is about the carer. What are your needs? Do you have any long-term conditions or any medical problems that you might need help with? Do you need any help around the house, which could be anything from gardening to shopping and things like that. They will ask about respite care. They will also ask about finances as well, which we know can be affected if you are taking on a caring role. So it just gives you an idea, but if you do want to find out more, go onto your local authority website and type in carers assessment, and all the information will be available there. Okay, the next question is for Malabin, moving on from the carers assessment form. So we've had several people ask, who can help fill out these forms? Who helped you?
Okay, so as I mentioned initially, Ajay and I tried to fill in these forms ourselves, but the main person I can signpost you to, again, is Parkinson's UK. So if you go, we should have some links in with later on. So it's Parkinson's UK you want to go to. And again, within the Edgware Hospital, where Ajay was like being helped by the consultant there, they had part of the Parkinson's UK there, and they had a person who helped me fill in the forms. So what you need to do is you just need to either ask your GP. If your GP doesn't help, then you ask your Harrow carers. If they can't help, then you ask the consultant, and they're the Parkinson's multidisciplinary team. And between those three, you should get somebody who can help you with the forms. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, very clear. Thank you.
Yeah.
An additional facility that's available across the country is something called a social prescriber. They're accessible directly and also through the general practice, GP. And these are people who can help you, signpost you to local resources, help you with form filling and other support services as well. Okay, Vishal, my next question's coming to you. So there were bits of your talk where the speed of the Wi-Fi meant that it wasn't quite clear. So you may have answered some of this, but it'd be great just to get a recap. So the question is, could we hear some more about finding external carers? For example, NHS versus private. How do we find them? How do we vet them? And how do we keep them?
Yes, I'm presuming this is on the basis of carers coming to the home and to your own home. Hopefully the connection is better. I'm not sure what happened there. Apologies. But there are many places in which you can actually search for carers. And I would say that actually, when looking at a carer coming into your home, you have effectively a choice where you can either try to find a private carer that is an individual coming and you've sourced that someone who has sort of a connection with your family or someone who actually understands how to operate within the family environment you have and have a skill set where independently they're coming to care. And there's actually websites where you can actually find those sort of carers called carers.com. And it's almost like an agency in its own right in terms of a portal where you can find carers. But where the responsibility lies is for you to then also go into the process of vetting and ensuring that they have the relevant skills, qualifications, and also checks behind that. Where I would probably encourage maybe more to go to is actually go to agencies and to find a local agency that you have nearby. The best website, again, to find what's local to you is homecare.co.uk. Homecare.co.uk actually provides almost a database resource of many care home agencies around the area, which provide both sort of funded as well as self-funded care options. And having that conversation with ones that actually already display, if you go onto the websites, they'll tell you what specific areas of care they can support you with. You can actually find that those supporting more predominantly with dementia, you can have a conversation with them to find exactly what they can do to help and support in that regard. The benefit of going with a professional care agency as opposed to finding a private carer is that the professional care agencies are regulated. They will be inspected regularly. They'll go through a number of checks to make sure that the carer has one, obviously the safety, which is a DBS check to make sure that there is safe to come into your home. And alongside that, they provide professional training to ensure that they have the relevant skills to actually help that family when they do go in. Likewise, an agency such as this, when you rely upon just one individual to come to care in your own home, there is almost an over-reliance on that one individual, and one individual can't always care at all times. They also need breaks. They may also fall ill, and therefore you need more of a plethora of family members or others to support. At least with the professional care agency, they will also have another team of carers, and normally they would introduce 2 or 3 carers to the family so that they can work in rotation to ensure that there are no gaps that happen at that time. And if you want to vet effectively the agency itself, as I said before, because they are regulated, you actually can look at their rating and their inspections on the CQC website, which is cqc.org.uk. But as you say, the homecare.co.uk is a TripAdvisor style rating service as well, which friends and family that use the service can actually give testimonials to give a better indication as to how the quality of care has been.
Brilliant. Again, so much information and useful information there. I can see Varshavin wants to add to that as well. Go for it, Varshavin.
One thing is, especially if it's dementia. So for my Sasu, we had Ratanben. And in some way, it worked better if you have an individual or maybe 2 who can, because they know the person. There's a set way of doing things. Sometimes with the care agency, you get different people turning up. You have no control over who turns up on the day and what time they come. So, there are some things, if you do find somebody who really works with you as a family, if there are ways of getting them, it works really well for the family, because it becomes as you said, a partnership in terms of caring.
Thank you so much. I've got some more questions coming in through the form. I would welcome anyone who's listening at the moment. If they did want to come onto Zoom to ask the questions directly, you're more than welcome to. Please press the button that raises your hands and we can come to you to ask the questions directly or to make any comments that you would like as well. In the meantime, there's another question that has come through, two actually, one for Malabin, one for Varshabin. Malabin, are you aware of any WhatsApp groups for Parkinson's disease in the community?
To be honest, I don't like using WhatsApp so much, so I don't think I'm the right person to ask on that. But what I can say is recently, like within the Harrow group, and also within Brent and Barnet, those two, they have tried to set up WhatsApp groups during the pandemic. So if it's not there, I think they will set one up, you know, because they've already got members part of the Harrow group or part of Barnet and Brent. So again, if you go via Parkinson's UK, on there you can search your particular area, and then through that there would be a lead who is, you know, who is looking after that area, and they would be able to put you in touch with whoever you want to. So, you know, that way you can make friends or get guidance or anything with people in a similar boat to you in your area if you want. And also on Zoom, again with Parkinson's UK, they've got a lot of classes that are on Zoom now. So you could be, you know, you could be in your home in London, but there could be a class, say, somewhere up in York, and you could join that. So, you know, it's not limited to just your area now because of you know, the pandemic. So I'd say, you know, use whatever things you like to do and make the most of it. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah.
And Varshabin, this one you've got experience with, which is someone's asking, how does a dementia cafe work and how does it help people with dementia?
Okay, so dementia cafes are now widely set up. There's one in Ashford Place in Brent. There's one in Harrow. You can imagine, you know, somebody with a little bit of advanced dementia, to take them in a community setting is very, very difficult. So a dementia cafe is where the carer and the person with dementia, they go together. There's Annie's Place in Harrow, but you know, and they participate in the activities, and everybody else is also aware of what the requirement is. So the activities are a bit calmer. They're not so fast paced. They're not very busy environments. Some of the activities can be done in pairs or in a small group. There is also something like singing and music, because people who have dementia, they respond really well. So, you know, now you get choirs and people coming together with a similar condition because they understand each other. They're not so harshful if things don't go well, because they understand everybody's on the same journey. And creating this kind of setup, people look forward to it, because a person with dementia will make friends with another person with dementia, and they've got something to talk about. It's not always in our community. We are just so afraid that if somebody in our family has dementia, that we don't talk about it in our public settings. This becomes a safe place. So that's why, you know, they are really useful. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. And it was something that you've run yourself from your living room as well. So actually there's opportunities to host dementia cafes.
Sorry. Okay. You know, in this country, we have legal obligations. So you actually need, because it becomes a public liability. So there's a process to set it up. It's not something you just do it, say, invite people into your own home. And even if I have carers in my home, I would get insurance. There's a company called Fish. So, you know, if you're getting carers in your own home, you yourself are insured. It's a little bit more complex. And if somebody's willing, I'm happy to help them set up. Because I had to go back to work, I'm not carrying on with it at the moment.
That's brilliant, thank you. So there are a few medically questions that have come through to me, and then I think I'm going to ask for all of you to help with a final question after that. So the medical questions that have come through to me, firstly, they've asked whether I can go back to one of the slides. So I'm just going to screen share, and I hope you can all see this. So this is one of the slides about planning ahead that one of our viewers have asked about. And this is really important. We've all mentioned this. So the things that can deteriorate with any long-term condition, not just with Parkinson's and dementia, but it's about mobility and safety, toileting, washing, bathing, dressing yourselves, feeding, and support for carers. And by this, what we mean is think ahead. You know, if someone has cancer, if someone has a lung problem, if someone has bad arthritis, if they have Parkinson's, dementia, toileting is something that they will struggle with if your toilet is upstairs and their mobility is restricted. Okay, so plan ahead to think about what you can put in place. And there are simple things like having a commode next to the bed, or having a bottle that you can use in bed so that people are not getting up in the middle of the night and risking having falls. There might be something about, you know, actually putting in different facilities in the home as well. And these things don't happen very quickly. You can't suddenly put something like this in overnight. Similarly with washing and bathing. So, you know, if your bathroom, your shower or bathtub is upstairs, if you've got a bathtub and not a walk-in shower, someone who's restricted in movement, you know, to actually climb over into the bathtub is a risk and is something that they may not be able to do as their condition progresses. So again, plan early for this. What changes do you need to make? And an occupational therapist is really helpful for that. They will come and do a home assessment for you so that they will see where the person's abilities are at the moment and what they might need in the future. One of the other questions that I was asked is about choking, actually, so related to feeding. People with long-term conditions, particularly Parkinson's and dementia, they have problems with swallowing at some point. It may be that they forget to feed themselves. It may be that when they feed themselves, that they might start choking if their swallowing is becoming a problem. So we talked about a speech and language therapist or a speech and swallow therapist who can actually help assess firstly to prevent any choking. So they will watch and test the person with their swallow, see if there are any risks. They might recommend changing what you feed them. So rather than giving them, you know, plain juices, they might talk about thickening their feeds. Rather than giving people solids, they might talk about pureeing foods. So these are things to help the prevention of bad things happening as you go forwards. And in terms of if someone is choking, frequently the signs can be they're coughing and spluttering. So you eat and drink something and you suddenly start coughing and spluttering. That means food is not going down the way that it should. And so following on from that, a question I was asked is, where can we get training for people? Where can we get training if we wanted to know how to treat choking in people that we're living with? Now, one of the trainings available for anyone, any members of the public, is basic life support training and first aid training. This is available from lots and lots of different organisations. Charities such as the British Red Cross run this, often places of work, if you ask them, will run things like that as well. And particularly if you're a carer, you can ask about any local agencies, including your GP surgery or local charities that run this service as well. And then little things like dressing yourself and mobility. So trying to keep mobile for as long as possible is so important. The longer you spend sitting or in bed, the more tired your muscles will become, the more weaker your bones will become. Then any small effort will hurt. It will cause you to get tired. It will cause your muscles to get tired more quickly. And without that mobility, your balance starts going as well. So it's so important. Even if you're sitting, you can exercise. Even if you're able to do minimal exercise because of tiredness, do that, because it will help reduce the progression. It will help with preventing falls. It will help with your muscle wasting not happening. So and it may mean that you may need mobility aids. Some people are very embarrassed about walking with walking sticks and frames, but actually this is the prevention and the planning ahead that we need to think about. We can think about mobility scooters for outdoors, chair lifts in the house going up and down stairs, and even little handles that people can hold on to, or little bars that people can hold on to going up the stairs or in the shower. So lots and lots of practical stuff, again, that an occupational therapist can help with also. Okay, so moving on from that, Malabin, did you want to add something?
I just wanted to say, sorry, one of the main things that really helped us was they put the rail that goes up the stairs, so the banister rail, and the council had come in to do that, and that as well as the grab rails within the shower unit. So those two things really helped, and they've helped for the last sort of 15 years. So that's something I'd suggest to everyone. Okay. Yeah.
Brilliant, really helpful, thank you. The last question's for everybody, actually. So just let me know who wants to go first. So the question is, can I ask what advice you have for someone who's reluctant to accept help from carers? Who wants to take that one? So people are reluctant to accept help. It sounds like someone can see that a carer is struggling, but they're reluctant to ask for help. How do we convince them? How do we talk to them?
Would you like me to go?
Yeah, go for it, Varshabin.
Okay. I think with some of the conditions, especially dementia, whatever, you're almost holding the whole caring role. And it's like, you know, I've set the routine, things are working. And, you know, other people can see you are struggling, but you yourself don't want to admit it, because admission is like saying I failed. So anybody who's doing caring, at the beginning of the journey, if you've got a family member who's caring, let other people come in. Say, all right, why don't you go and do something? We'll just have chat. Yeah, just start with small breaks, even if it's half an hour. Say, just go and have a little walk, and I will sit while you're doing that. Those are so important, and especially when you look at an elderly couple caring for each other, because the caring burden can be quite significant. You know, we now get, you know, our parents with the young people moving out of the house, they end up with the husband and wife kind of being a support structure for each one of them, because they may be both caring for each other and themselves needing help. So small stands before you go for the big things. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Varshabin. Malabin, go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm probably guilty of not taking, you know, help early on in myself. So it's a very difficult one for me to answer, because every now and then it's my family who steps in, and they're saying, right, it's time for care now. It's time for care. So it's probably how you're brought up. You know, that's got something to do with it. But I'll let anybody else answer that one now.
I mean, there's a few points from my perspective, from a professional perspective. So as a doctor, I always ask patients the same question multiple times at different stages. Just because they don't want a carer now doesn't mean they might not want it in a month's time or a few weeks' time. So if now isn't the right time, then think about asking again at some point. A no now doesn't mean a no always. The other thing that I ask people who I can see need help but don't want a specific type of help is more openly, rather than saying, you need a carer, why don't you get a carer? Have a more open conversation about what they might be willing to have help with. You know, what help do you think you need? What help would you accept? And it may not be that they want to give up their caring duties, but actually if they could give up doing their washing, doing their gardening, doing their shopping, those are all things that will help relieve some burden. So give them options and try in different ways at different times as well. Vishal Bhai, do you want to say any last words before I bring this to a close?
Yeah, no, I think this is so some points may have been covered in the presentation I said, but in some ways, obviously that sense of there are quite a few emotions that come into play when you have a loved one, and especially giving that utmost care, and especially your role and responsibility in that. And there is that feeling effectively of potentially failure by obviously going to elsewhere, but also guilt, saying that why am I giving my loved one away? And I think it sort of mentioned that there's actually an element of partnership that can happen in a journey that takes many to many touch points. Sometimes going straight to a carer may not be the right option straight away as a conversation, but there are many other touch points along that journey, especially by even just recommendations in terms of activities, by actually letting that individual may be reluctant to accept other type of formal care, at least guide them to say that, well, go with your loved one to this activity, maybe go and share that activity together, maybe do these activities in group settings. We'll start encouraging an element of informal care that actually starts generating a feeling around what other support can be required. And also those conversations, as you say, when you go to Dementia Cafe, you have the opportunity then, being still the sole carer, but having conversations with others as well that may encourage that same debate. So I think there are many touch points at that point. Some are very accepting of the fact that actually as a family, we need to manage that better and understand it. But as I say, sometimes it does take a little bit of a journey to go on, and making sure we get the right information, informed choices to help along that way.
Brilliant. Varshavin?
One thing I just say for our families, especially in the culture that we live, talking about incontinence is a real taboo, and it takes a really, really long time. And, for the carer, it's like, at night, if the whole bed is wet, you are doing so much washing or whatever, getting them to wear the incontinence pads or other materials, do it a little earlier. Let the person, slowly get used to it. Go when you are traveling or whatever, because sometimes because of that, they are so reluctant to leave the house as well. They completely become housebound. So it's almost like, you're going back towards the time when, some of the material incontinence pads and things that are available. I think commode is quite difficult in some of the families because it's a visible sign and people are reluctant to have that, but just do seek help, because this is one of the most difficult things to do. And the pads actually make life a lot easier. If you can get, and then the NHS, if you are really require it, they will provide it. In this country, we don't need to go and buy. So I've got a few people who are maybe listening from Kenya. In Kenya, I've just recently been, and like my mother, she gets 24-hour care, and the African ladies, they are really, really good. To get 24-hour care in this country, in UK, it's far more difficult to the same level. So, we have other things, we've got other gadgets or whatever that is available, seek them out, because that makes the caring journey a lot more sustainable. Because at the end, you need to make it sustainable. You can't break down in the middle. Otherwise, both you and the person you are looking after are affected by it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Malabin, we're just about to come to a close. So after your comment, I think I'm going to bring this to a close and pass us back on to Rajvin.
Okay, I've just got one last thing, and this was asked by my elder brother. He was just suggesting, can we ask people to register their skills if they're good at caring within the community? Because, if we pull together, if we can help each other out, I might have an aunt who's living 2 minutes away from me, and if I can help that family, then maybe somebody else can help mine. It's just trying to say pull together, basically. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I think there is so much available. We have a good NHS system which is free at the point of need. We don't have to worry about lots of things that other people in other countries have to worry about in terms of reliable healthcare. Unfortunately, because of the COVID pandemic, there is a huge backlog on the different types of care available. And this makes it absolutely vital for us to plan ahead. Otherwise, when we get to a crisis point, and that's when problems happen, that's when stress happens, that's when patients and their carers are most affected. And like Varshabin said, you know, it has to be sustainable. This is long term, and our goal is to make sure that the people affected have a good quality of life for as long as absolutely possible. Okay, and a lot of that is not to do with what medicines that you take, and that's coming from me as a doctor who does all the prescribing. So as you've heard from Vishal Bhai, Varshabin, Malabin, a lot of the things that have improved their quality of life, their quality of care, and their loved ones' quality of life and care has not been to do with the medicines they take, but all the other support available. So I would like to thank all the speakers and the audience for so much information in the chat and for all the encouraging words as well, and pass you back on to Rajvibin.
Thank you so much to our speakers, Kathy-ben, Varsha-ben, Mala-ben, and Vishal Bhai. The talk today, hopefully we have recorded it, and it will be available on the OneJAIN website. So that's onejainuk.org. We have our own YouTube channel, and if you subscribe to it, you'll get alerts for any future webinars that are uploaded on there. We have a huge library, not huge, but a very wide library of webinars already available that we talk about COVID, cancer, elder care, diabetes, women's health. All of those videos are there to view. Some of you have asked about our sources and our slides, and we will try our best to put as much of the information that you've seen and heard from our speakers on that same website next to the poster of the webinar that you've seen today. I'd also like to thank Kumar Bhai, Paresh Bhai, and Ajay Bhai, our AV, YouTube and Zoom support team. I'd like to thank OneJAIN for supporting us and giving the Jain Health Initiative this platform. And I'd like to thank all of our many volunteers and speakers and advisors. We are about a 40-strong team, and we will come back to you later in the year. And in the summer, we are planning a sort of a health fair, a health screening fair. We're still in the planning stages, so please look out for all the messaging you'll get through your communities and WhatsApp. And we hope to see you there. Thank you, everyone. Jai Jinendra, and have a good evening.